the first thing I saw was at the very pit of this, the bottom of this abyss, was a fire, a red fire, as though you would glimpse a campfire on a distant in a distant valley. And but I was caught by the difference, and not only that, there was a sense of gloom, a sense of dread. And so I started to turn away from this, but then something happened. The fire became greater at the bottom. And as I'm looking down, two things happened. The brightness of the fire increased, and I realized that down and looking sideways, it was as though a door had opened, a large door. And I could hear a sound for the first time. And the sound was the sound of two large doors being forced open on hinges that had not been oiled, and you could hear them screeching and so on, and just rusty. And of course that flooded more light, so I realized the light was coming from the side to the bottom. And then, to my utter amazement, something shuffled out of that doorway. The doorway was huge, and so was the creature that came out. And I'm looking down on it, and it appeared to have a form, large, round. It was on fire. Its body was on fire. Its head was squat on its shoulders, and it seemed to be searching around the bottom of this pit for something. And then suddenly it was as though it became aware of me, and it swiveled its head around and looked up at me. And fellas, I can tell you something. The look of hatred that I saw in its glowing eyes, not just for me, but for all of mankind, will stay with me forever. On top of that, there was an odor that came out of that pit, a sense of decay, a sense of all things bad. And I turned because I couldn't bear to look at it. But just the second before I turned, it began to scramble up the sides of that pit. Now, for its size, it was large. It moved with an amazing nimbleness. And it crawled very rapidly up the side of that pit. And I scrambled backwards, falling backwards on my elbows, and it reared up out of the pit. And I was confronted by this creature, body on fire, dripping saliva, and the most horrendous face. But the other thing was, there was screaming, and the screaming was coming not from its mouth. The screaming appeared to be coming from within the body. It was as though this creature, Randy, had consumed souls, and they were crying out for mercy. And it stepped out of the pit and lumbered toward me. And to keep my sanity, I scrambled to my feet and turned my back to it. And remember, I said there's 6 words. I said the first 3, God forgive me. And then I turned and I turned toward the beautiful light, and I raised both hands, and this time I cried out the next 3 words. 3 words that I had never prayed in my life. God, help me. Help me. And instantly, 3 points of light appeared in that beautiful cerulean blue sky, converging toward me. One was coming from about 90 degrees, the other one from about 260, and the other one from about 310, and all converging into one. At the same time, this creature is behind me. And then, in addition to the screaming, I heard it speak my name. This creature knew me. It knew me. I wasn't that bad a person. I may not have gone to church, but I was not. What did I do to deserve this? All these thoughts were racing through my mind. And I gave to the poor. if there was a tax receipt. But what did I do to deserve this? And it had a strange voice. It was in between a growl and a whisper. And I could hear it saying, Jim, Jim, we are here for you. We are here for you. Join us. Come to us. And I honestly believe that had I turned at that moment and looked into its face, I would have been snatched. But instead, I concentrated on this beautiful light coming toward me. And all of a sudden, the lights fused together, and I'm looking at this light traveling toward me, and the light washed over me. And at that point, I turned to look back. And when that light struck that creature, it screeched and screamed in agony and scrambled backwards like a rat running for cover. Darkness and evil cannot live in the light of God. It must not live in the light of God. And I turned back to look, and I mean, I might not have gone to church, but I knew what an angel was. And suddenly I'm looking at three magnificent beings coming toward me. Very tall, very elegant, silver, long hair, beautiful golden light, which was, as I learned later, a refraction of their golden wings that creates this, what we call a halo. It's the light on their silver hair from their wings when their wings are extended. And I remember being astonished because the feeling of love and peace and safety that flooded over me when just mere seconds before I felt all this hatred and evil toward me was truly overwhelming. And so they came right up to me, and the first one approached me. And of all the things that I will always remember about this incredible encounter were their eyes. Now imagine these creatures, these beautiful creatures, 10 feet tall, another one about 12 feet tall, and then the one coming behind, dressed in warrior gear, truly a guardian angel, about 15 feet tall. So these are wonderful creatures. So the first one walks up to me and looks down at me. And the thing that I'll always remember, their violet eyes. Violet eyes. And then he spoke to me, and his lips didn't move. It was more than telepathy. He was in my mind, and I was in his. And I say he or his. Look, I don't want to use the word androgynous, but they looked like the best of all of us. They had the gentleness of a female and the strength of a warrior, and just this incredible combination of everything that's good. And all of a sudden, I feel this wonderful arm come up and come around my shoulder, and then I'm conscious that this magnificent, huge feathered wing came out around his arm, and he pressed me into his chest. And I looked up into those violet eyes, and I hear this in my mind, this beautiful voice that said to me, "Fear not, James, for we are your constant friends." And so there I am, cuddled up to something that I thought was just a myth, a legend. I was taken by how they bowed to me. They bowed to me. And I felt rather uncomfortable because I should be bowing to them. And I questioned why, because it was such a bow of respect and subservience, and bowed very low. But I asked why, and they said, "James, do you not know that when we look at mankind, we see the spark of life of our master?" Isn't that something? We who consider ourselves the lowest of the low are looked at by the angels in awe of us.